We've all been there, scribbling on a piece of paper, trying to elaborate on an idea, trying to figure out just how to make it. Just this how coming up again and again. Frustration after frustration, we ask ourselves this question. This one question. Where do I start? Actually, that was one of the questions I asked myself when starting out. I was wondering how many people at the same time were asking this. I want to mount my own company. I've got dozens of ideas. Just how do I start? Well, let's see. Right, let's do this.
I wanna rock!
Ready when you are?
Ready.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for joining the interview. So that was, well, very kind of you. I know you're quite a busy woman. So first off, I was wondering, you read the article that I've put online about how to make a startup, comparing it to founding a group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, so first of all, how would you describe to the audience, very briefly, what you do here?
So my name is Florence, and what I do in Thionville is basically I try to create an ecosystem, a digital ecosystem, which was quite of a challenge, knowing that Thionville is blocked between Metz, which is quite a big city, and Luxembourg, which is absorbing a lot of startups here. Well, I was positively surprised because I met lots of entrepreneurs here, and who really decide to change life, to change their life first, but also to change the lives of other people. So they have an idea and they have thought about it, and they come here to just put it on paper and see how they can create it. So basically my role is to animate this building. So for the people who don't know exactly what TP is the Digital Center in Thionville, which was built last year to reach the needs of young entrepreneurs, to create their project being alone and feeling lonely while creating their companies. So basically my role is to animate this building, to host the project holders who would like to either rent an office or come here as a co-worker. But more than that, I would really define myself as a business mentor for startups and sometimes as a coach. So coach and business mentor are quite different options. My role here is really to help the project holders become really company leaders, and for that they really need to work on three main aspects: access to their market, access to competencies, and access to finance. So that's basically what we do here. So we accompany people, will it be on an individual basis and also on I would say more on an ecosystem basis. So we organize lots of workshops to raise their attention and their awareness on the multiple aspects of the company setup that they need to manage, whereas it's very often not the case. So they really need to build competencies and to raise their awareness on the different aspects they really need to focus on.
Let's say now I wake up one morning and I have an idea for a company. I'll be brewing this for a bit of time. What is the first thing that I should do?
Well, if you have an idea, it's certainly that you have reached a frustration or basically observed the world as it is and decided to change a little bit what it is about. So my first suggestion would be really to look over the market. Because if you think you have a good idea, certainly thousands of people have had the same, maybe at the same time, maybe a bit before you. So to me, what's important is to really have a good idea, a good perception of where your idea stands on the market. So are there already some actors that are starting to address the need behind your idea? So you really need to first have a good idea of how it is really concretely on the market. It can be that you evaluate the necessity for your idea. But sometimes it's difficult because when you really are a game changer, then you are creating a new usage, for instance. So it's really the case of most platforms today. The market is key, the users are key. So to me, if you don't have a clue of how to do it, test it on your friends, test it on people you trust, test your idea. Your idea will always, and that's certainly something I will repeat during this speech, your idea has always to be confronted to the market and to reality. So that's for sure. So test it first with people you trust.
Let's say I tested it and it seems to be a good idea. Everybody seems to like it. So I decide to mount up the company, mount my own startup. So once the company is started, how should creators prioritize their own tasks? Because it is quite a vast thing to uphold.
I wouldn't recommend to create a company, to set up a company, unless you need it. The reason is really obvious, is that as soon as you create a company, you have charges. You have expense, you need to disburse money that maybe you don't have. So my first advice would be not to create too early. You can do lots of things without having a structure. So only create it when needed. Okay. So when you start having your first orders and you know that you will have some income, not before. For me, the most important thing is to really focus on your vision and to always align your vision on reality. To ask yourself every morning, every day, what makes you different from other players? What makes you unique? That will be I would say, the basis of your value proposition. What kind of value do you bring to your clients, to your users, to your customers? So one of the first things is create your MVP. We all know that the MVP has not to be perfect, whereas lots of people tend to procrastinate because they want the product to be perfect before going to the market. Don't forget what Facebook looked like at the beginning, and they didn't care, and nobody remembers. So really go to the market, because what you need is the client feedback. You absolutely need client feedback to adapt and to adjust your product. You will have some ideas, but clients will bring some others to you, and it's really important that you stick to reality. So to me, creating an MVP and also focusing on execution. Lots of startups fail because of execution. They had great ideas, but when it comes to concrete, the product is not perfect, it's delivered very late, the service is not what you recommended. So execution is really key, and that is, based on my experience, something very important to focus on from day one.
What are the things that people should look out for once the startup is running? Well, I wouldn't say the dangers, but what should people be wary of once the startup is out?
There are lots of focus for attention, and knowing that we are not specialists in all aspects, we may not be a specialist in accounting or in tax or in regulation. So what's really important is not to stay alone, but really be mingling with experts. So that's certainly the key to at least reduce the risks that you're facing and address them accordingly. So as I said, you really need to have someone helping you on accounting if you're not an accountant. You really need to stay close of people experts in regulation, because regulation is evolving every day, and especially in digital, where in some places it seems not to be well regulated, and then suddenly regulation comes out. So regulation is key. Intellectual property protection is also key, because if what you do is strategic, but someone steals the idea from you, then and puts more money than you can on the table, then your idea brings to nothing. That may be the most challenging aspects for the startup. But one other aspect is also to focus on the team. Well, and we certainly speak of the team later on, but what's important at the beginning is that you can trust the people with whom you're working. Because it's like a wedding. I mean, it's like building a relationship on trust. And if you cannot trust the people you're working with, that will end up in a difficult divorce. Building the trust within the shareholders, between the founders, you will be creating trust, you will be creating credibility and visibility. And visibility cannot be created if you're not credible. So you will be building your own credibility. So doing what you promised, delivering what you promised, and that's why I was referring to execution, which is, to me, the key aspect for startups.
That was quite interesting. Like, if we speak about the idea, it also may be stolen. However, the other element is also to speak as much as possible to be able to adapt the product in the end. So, which is best? What is the good balance?
I meet founders every day that don't want to speak about their ideas because they are afraid of the idea being stolen. And my opinion on that, and I'm certainly not the only one to think about that, is that an idea equals nothing unless it has been at least put on reality check. Why? Because it's so easy to have an idea, but when it comes to execution, it's another business. So you can speak of your ideas. Well, depending on to which level and to which people. But I would really recommend to speak out the idea. You can also protect yourselves with confidentiality agreements. So depending of whom you are speaking to. For instance, if you want to develop an industrial project and you need to partner with a large group, for sure you will go to this group and speak to this group about your idea. And to protect the idea, you'll have a confidentiality agreement. So there are mechanisms that exist to protect the ideas, but again, don't feel paranoid about it. An idea, to me, equals nothing until it becomes an MVP.
So you also spoke of the team element in having a company. In that case, what would be best? What would you recommend? Is it to have a team or being the sole founder and the only person in the company itself? Since a lot of founders don't always have the correct network or the amount of people that they would want in their own company. So what would be best to you?
I would not recommend anything in terms of the right number of people because usually the project emerges in itself. So sometimes you have the idea by yourself and sometimes you have the idea with 2 or 3 friends. So it's very difficult to say no amongst your 3 friends you only take 2. I wouldn't go like that. The thing is, when you decide to really work on a project, what is important is to have a complementary set of competencies. So to me, the main thing is not the number of people, but the balance of competencies. Bertrand Piccard, the famous guy who traveled around the world with the solar impulse, tended to say, yeah, what he said is, when you build a team, make sure you build a team with someone completely opposite to you in terms of competencies, because then 1 + 1 = 3. What it means is that if you build a team with people who have a completely different set of skills, then you leverage on the team and then you create more opportunities. If you aggregate people that comes from the same school or from the same graduation system, then you aggregate people who are the same, and then 1 + 1 = 1. So you don't benefit from this leverage effect. And if you are alone, because that can happen that you are alone, don't look necessarily for other people to join, but look for places like here where you can find other competencies, not especially to aggregate them into the company, but competencies that can really help you. A lawyer, like an accountant, like a strategist, like a mentor like me. I consider myself as sometimes, jumping as a co-pilot and then jumping out and jumping in and jumping out. So I can, because I know the company, because I know the strategy, because I know the priorities, sometimes I can be here to help But then the pilot, the guy who really leads the company, who makes the decision, who owns them, is the founder. So in a nutshell, no recommendation in terms of numbering, but recommendation in terms of complementing the competencies.
So, what would be your final advice for people who are starting their company then? What would be for you something that you have seen all throughout the creation process and during your time here that others founders would really need to know?
Focus on clients, focus on markets, to make sure that you will always develop something that is in really deep connection with the needs of the market. Even if the needs are not yet verbalized, make sure that you stay connected to the market. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have built a vision, build a team that will make your vision come true. Having a vision is really cool, but if you make no actions to put your vision as an objective, then it stays as a vision and you go nowhere. So having a team that enables the project to go from vision to reality is key. And what's important as well is to stay focused. When you have an idea, it's so easy to build something like, and what if we do that? And what if we add this functionality? And what if we can do that? That's cool. Keep all these ideas, but first stick to something delimited so that you can at least develop it and sell it. Keeping this focus is even more important when you look for investment. You can find investors that have understood the vision of your company and that will help it or make it adjust or pivot whenever it's needed and in connection with you. But you can have several investors, small investors like business angels, who for some of them are very familiar with the business of angeling, but some of them are not, and they can be willing to take part to the decisions, take part to the idea brainstorming and so on. And doing that, you can lose completely track of your own business. So it's really very important to stay focused. And also, when you will be looking for investors, don't forget that it's difficult to reach investors, but you also need to choose your investors. So not only you can be proud if a specific fund wants to invest in your company. That's pretty nice, but you need to really choose them. It will be the same as the co-founders. It's like a wedding. So if you don't trust the people, it's not because they are bringing 2 million in your company that you will have a nice road together. You will be on the same boat, and you need to make sure that your investors really understand where you want to go and accompany you in that direction. These are, I would say, the kind of advice I would give. Be resilient as well, because the journey you are starting is not, I would say, the coolest one, the simplest one. Emotionally, that will be a set of, I would say, very different emotions every day, but you will live great emotions. So don't hesitate and dare, just dare. That would be certainly my final advice. Just dare. And maybe do not always listen to people who will say, oh, have you thought about that? Because it will be very difficult. You should think about it twice before launching that. Don't always listen to people who want to refrain your dreams. Go for them, network, and make sure you are well accompanied, but dare and go.
In one sentence, she summarized everything. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing has to. Your company will most likely change over time, and you'll learn along the way. Just dare and go. Hi everyone, Theo Chivers here. Thank you very much for watching the interview. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell button, and share with your friends and whoever's interested in startups. Finally, don't forget to visit startupleaderscience.com for all the latest articles on how to create your own startups. This is Theo Chivers signing out.